Welcome to episode 5 of the Dear Young Man podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about when you should have kids, when you should get married, how to prepare yourself financially for marriage and for a family, and learning to admit that you were wrong on Dear Young Men. Recently, I have begun to realize that my time-tested advice of get married, start a family, save your money, and head to the gym might actually be wrong. With over 1 in 2 marriages ending in divorce, I wanted to take the next few minutes defending my position on the matter. As you know, I have these old beliefs that encourage men to get married, even though there is a tremendous risk, but I believe that the reward can be far greater. And while most people will talk about the eternal love you will experience, or the bond the two of you will have made before God and family, or even the beauty of watching your wife hold your newborn daughter for the first time, crying tears of joy as she just went through more pain than you will ever experience, I wanted to defend some of the less glamorous aspects of marriage. The first one is all the nagging. Some of you might look at nagging as a bad thing. I want to come to the defense of the seemingly nonstop nagging my wife does. Whether it be to take out the trash, clean up the kitty litter, or telling me to stop bringing mud into the house. I just cleaned that and guests are going to be over in 10 minutes. I, for one, have developed a foolproof tactic to get around nagging, and I call it ignoring. Once you start introducing ignoring into your life, everything seems to be a lot easier. Before, when your wife would say, "Seriously, Scott, you haven't showered in 4 days, my family's coming over, can you please hit the showers?" Ever since I introduced ignoring into our relationship, I can hardly hear her over the sounds of the video games I am playing. Side effects may include a slap upside the head, being asked to sleep on the couch, and the occasional eye roll. Results from initial testing have proven effective though. Next, a lot of people will complain about the test your woman might put you through, like, which one of my friends would you marry if I were to die? Side note, the correct answer is not, quote, the hottest one. I, for one, like to challenge myself, and I truly enjoy all the little traps that my wife sets for me. For example, asking me to give her a hug because she's, quote, having a bad day, or asking if I could please shower because it's now day 5 and her family texted her after coming over last night asking why I smell like cat poop. I know you are just trying to pull me away from my video games, Carly. Your Jedi mind tricks will not work on me. And finally, I have heard several men complain about how the love between them and their wife became so real that it produced a child, codifying their relationship with an additional layer to that unbreakable bond that they currently now share. I understand that little baby who is completely innocent and just wants a loving father to ride bikes with, play in the backyard with, color in the driveway with, run with, and be tackled by, can be looked at as a way for your wife to lock you into a relationship. But I want to offer up a different perspective. While I will admit my $2 mean more to me than anything other than God and my wife, the running up to the door as I am about to leave, begging me to stay, can be a little annoying. And seemingly endless amounts of energy that they have directed towards playing with you does get a little exhausting here and there. I will say, through all that, diapers can sort of be a little bit expensive, I guess. On this channel, I'm trying to teach you the value of the dollar. And while the money I spend on my kids really isn't as much as most people said that it would be, it is more than $0. Money that I could use to buy nicer noise-canceling headphones because the one I have are not good enough to stop the noise of my wife loudly banging the vacuum against the wall. So take my advice. Get married, boink your wife, had kids, and be happy. Maybe life is just as simple as that, which means that is the end of the monologue, and I am Scott, and this is the Dear Young Man podcast. So if this might be the last episode, unfortunately, of the podcast, I've really enjoyed making it. I've had a ton of fun making it, but once my wife actually hears this, so obviously at this point, I have to ask you now if you could like, comment, subscribe, share, post, tweet, post on Facebook, whatever it is. Obviously, it really helps out the podcast. I know there aren't a ton of people watching, but those people that are watching, I do truly appreciate it. It'll be amazing to look back one day on episode 100, 200, whatever it may be, and see where we started and see how much less funny I think I get. So in today's episode, I actually got a comment from a friend of mine, Tom in the Sky. He's got a wonderful YouTube channel. I will have it linked down below. He asked me, I have a question. How do you know when you're ready for kids? Financially, age, situation, level of personal fulfillment, success beforehand, and I guess the same for marriage. Really enjoying these podcasts, Scott. Genuinely, I think your hairline is actually looking thicker, and you're also really funny, handsome, smart, and intelligent. I may have added a few things at the end there, but I obviously really appreciate his comment, and that's going to be pretty much the entire episode today is talking about those few things. So the first one is going to be when to get married, and I want to sort of progress through this because you get married, then you have kids, and you have to sort of make all these decisions. So when you decide to get married, there's not going to be a moment. There will never be a moment where you go, now I just hit me. I just realized that now I should get married. I think a lot of TV shows, a lot of television, a lot of movies have sort of portrayed marriage as this thing where you get pressed and you get nagged by your wife or your soon-to-be wife, soon-to-be fiance, whatever it be, for long enough, and then you eventually pull the trigger at the very last minute, running to the airport, ripping out the ring, and then they say yes, and you live a beautiful life. That's not really what a relationship actually is. A relationship is work. It's hard. It can be the most rewarding thing. It is the most rewarding thing I think that's available to you, but it's obviously not like what they show in movies, because that's movies and those are lies. Well, they might not be all lies, but they're lies for the most part. The way I figured it out, and looking back, it's really funny because I got married. I proposed to my wife when I was 23 years old, and then I got married when I was 24. So I was relatively young, especially for modern culture. I mean, 100 years ago, that would be like an antique to get married. But in modern days, I was married pretty young, especially engaged very young. I didn't have an exact moment when I knew that I was going to marry my wife. It was just the idea of not having her in my life to me seemed like it didn't make sense to me. I feel like I just needed her to be in my life. And she put a little bit of a timer on me. My wife, God bless her, but she knows what she wants. She knows how she wants it. She knows when she wants it. And she wanted to be married. She always wanted to be married young. And I was her boyfriend at the time. So I was the most likely suitor to get her married young. So my wife is awesome too. She was not the type of woman that wanted the most expensive wedding or the most expensive ring or the most expensive dress, whatever it may be. We actually were able to use a lot of the wedding money that we got to buy our first home or put a down payment down on our first home because she had saved so much money for the wedding. Like she was cutting back here and there. We didn't have expensive food, whatever. And I think that there are a few red flags you want to look for. If your soon-to-be wife or soon-to-be fiance is sending you rings that cost $9, $10, $11, $12, $13, $14,000, beyond that, that's ridiculous. I spent like $1,200 on my wedding ring to my wife. That's how much it cost. That's it. That's all I spent. And like $300 of that was insurance, which I shouldn't have got. So don't get insurance on wedding rings. It's a complete scam. Don't do it. It's stupid. I basically spent $900 on a wedding ring and $300 on nonsense. And if your soon-to-be fiance isn't happy with the ring, don't marry her. Take that as an opportunity to say, I thought this was going to work out a little bit differently. I'm going to move on. This is not going to work out. If you care more about how nice this ring is than the fact that you and I are about to commit to spending our entire lives together, then, maybe just don't marry that person. That's what I really, truly believe. My wife was never like that. She's never been like that. She never will be like that because that's just how she is. And I think that you should find a woman who is like that. Because if they demand a ring that costs more than 3 months' salary or whatever like the number is, that's so stupid. $1,000 is more than enough. I promise you $1,000 is more than enough. Because we look back at it now, that was 5 years ago we got engaged, 5.5 years ago we got engaged. And we look back at like a fondness now. It's like, wow, look at where we've come. Like, yeah, I could buy you a much more expensive ring now. I'm not gonna, Carly, so don't ask for a more expensive wedding ring now. Maybe when we're like 100, we could get one. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's where you come from. It's who you are. The wedding ring is who you are in that moment. Things change. Like you will, as you get older and as you work more and as she maybe has her career, you guys have kids, whatever it may be, you'll get to a point where you look back and you think, wow, it's funny that all I could afford was a $900 ring and I put it on a credit card. I put it on a credit card when I bought it for her. And that's how little money I had. I was worth zero. I think I was actually worth negative at that point. So I was worth negative money. And I think that's such an amazing part of getting married young and getting engaged young. And so that's my one little piece of advice is if she wants a more expensive ring and you get her something cheaper and she's not happy with it, or she like says, oh, it doesn't fit or the sizing, blah, 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 blah. She just wants a new one. And so then just dump her. I really believe that. Just dump her. Don't send her a text. You should say it to her face. And that's all you have to do. So when to know exactly is really, really hard. Will become, especially as a man, this is dear young men, so I'm assuming only men listening to this. So ladies, skip ahead. As a guy, your wife will turn you into the man that you were made to be. That's what a woman does. That's what the good women do, especially, is they will turn you into the man you were made to be. So if you're waiting around to become the man that will be a good husband and be a good father, that kind of stuff, you'll never be there. You need a woman to bring you to that point. That's the point of marriage. Marriage is to pull you up from the slums where you are, guys. You stinky, take a shower. Put us in deodorant, brush your teeth. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They will pull you out of the slums where you currently are, and they will make you into the person that you were made to be. And you can only really do that through a woman. You can wait your entire life for that moment of, man, finally the stars are aligned. That is a stupid way to live. That is not how life works. When the explorers came over to the Americas, or they went over into wherever, I don't know, up into Europe for the first time, they didn't know what they were doing. They just jumped. They were like, I'm just gonna get on a boat and just go that way for like a lot of days, and then we'll see what happens. And to think that we live in such a modern luxury now that that's not how it works. You don't just get to wait and choose and, well, I'm going to see what happens, and then maybe when I'm 37, we can get engaged, we'll be married we'll have been dating for 13 years at that point. Just pull the trigger. You need your wife. Marriage is this funny thing. I thought that when I got married, I thought it was just a formality. We were already living together, which I would suggest not doing. Looking back, we were already living together, and I said to all my friends, like, yeah, like, I'm looking forward to it, but it's more just a formality. Like, when we get married, it's just like, we already do the marriage thing, and I'm looking at marriage as something that's just sort of like, who cares? But then I actually got married, and I can't believe how wrong I was. It's actually hard to understand how wrong and how mistaken I actually was when I actually got married. That moment, when you look back, you look at that moment, you go, that was a catalyst of my life. At that point in time, I was working part-time at a golf Galaxy. I was making no money, making like $9 or $10 an hour. And we had this like super cheap home. We were living very cheap. And I look at that moment in my life, and it was the catalyst to every single positive thing that has happened to me since that day. Obviously, I'm making the changes, but my wife is there step for step with me. Every single step of the way, every mistake I make, every time I mess up, she's there to pull me up. Every time I do something well, she's there to pat me on the back, wipe the sweat off my brow. She is like the rock. I think a woman will turn you into the man that you were meant and destined to be. So if you're waiting your entire life to be that right person, then like it's never going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be a better person now. And so if you are the type of person who is like looking at porn, who is looking at other women, like trying to hook up with other women while you're with your girlfriend, like, obviously don't get married. Like don't even be dating her. That's just cruel. What you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is cheating. I think that you need to look at yourself in the mirror and think, can I give my life to this person? And you'll probably say no. And then you just need to jump. Like, that's kind of how it is. If you're 18, 19, 20 years old, maybe wait a little bit longer. Like, to be honest, maybe you should wait a little bit longer. I think that I would suggest getting married young. I got married at 24, but if you wanted to wait a few years to your 23, 24, 25, 26, I think that's okay. Obviously, the younger, in my opinion, the better. That way you can be younger when you have kids, so on and so forth. But at some point, you're just going to need to pull the trigger. And I can't give you a firm answer on when you should get down on one knee and get married. But I think that you just have to look at the person you're with and think, this person will turn me into the man that I was made to be. And then when you know that, ask them to marry you. I asked my wife's dad first, and then I asked her, but then that's what you do. And then your life, it'll be the catalyst for changing your entire life. I think that don't get married to somebody whose fundamental, basic principles you disagree with. The very basic things, like your opinions on like human life. Like, what is your opinion on human life? Like, does it matter? Does it not matter? Are we just atoms floating through space? Are we souls? You should be aligned on that. Because if you just think you're both atoms, that's fine. Like, if you agree to that, that's fine. I mean, I disagree, but if that's fine. But if you think you're a soul, if you think you're more than just atoms in space dust, and that you think you're more than that, then that's good too, because that's what I believe. And that means you're right. No, but if you both agree, if you both think that, then that's good. So basically you need to have your fundamental principles down. I think that like the money stuff is important, but people change. My wife used to suck with money. I was always good. My wife used to suck with money. Now she's really good with money now. People do change. People get better. People improve. But you have to have like the basic values of your life, the basic principles that you guide yourself with. Those should align. And if the building blocks of your relationship, if you can agree on the building blocks, like we're never going to get divorced. Divorce is not an option. If you agree on these types of things, then I think that that's when it's time to pull the trigger. And you also have to be in a point where you have to be your own man. You have to be able to support your wife in a way. Obviously, I've talked about how I would love for my wife to not be full-time. Like, we're getting to that point. We're saving money. We're investing. We're doing everything we need to do to get to a point where she doesn't have to work and she can just sit home and raise the kids. So you're not going to, if you're waiting around to make enough money, it's probably not going to happen for a long time. Things are expensive now. two income households are a lot more necessary than they used to be. So you're going to have to wait, but you have to be the type of person who can look down in the next 3, 4, 5 years and think, I can be the type of man that my wife needs me to be. And then she will turn me into the type of man that I was made to be. And then that's when you should get married. And that's really hard. I don't know when. I don't even know that I knew that. I think I got lucky. Honestly, I think I got lucky. I think our values aligned, and I asked her, and she said yes, and I got lucky. So next is, now that you're married, when should you have kids? And I think that you should get married before you have kids, because kids in two-parent households fare far better than kids raised in a single-parent household by any metric, any available metric you could possibly find. So when should you have kids? Oh, geez. This is a little bit more complicated, because kids, that's a whole new human. I think be married. So many people told us to enjoy being married, go travel, go do this, go do that. And we ended up getting pregnant like 2 years after we got married. I think that to me, a relationship, getting married is not all about having kids. But now that I have kids, it's like, oh, that's really all that matters. That's really all I care about, is having kids. My kids, that's like my whole life now is built around my wife, my kids, and like that's it. Like that's my life. That's my guiding principle. So when should you have kids? I don't know how to explain that to you. I think that when you and your wife can come to an agreement that the amount of work that you will both do. In my household, my wife does the vast majority of everything, to be honest. I mean, she does basically all the diaper changes. I have never changed my 7-month-old's diapers to this point. I have helped with my oldest, but I have not changed the youngest one yet. I think that like you just have to agree on what you're both willing to do. And it's the same thing kind of with the values. Like, what do you value? And once you can agree on that, and you can have a conversation as to at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, who's going to be doing what, who's handling what. And if you can have that agreement, you can come to that understanding, then just send it. Kids, like the thing is with kids is you will figure it out. The second you become a parent, you're like, oh, wow, my life actually matters now. This stuff actually counts. Like before, it's like, who cares if I get fired? Who cares if I lose my job? Who cares if this? Who cares if that? And then you have kids, you go, oh my gosh, this little infant that can't do anything other than sleep, cry, and poop. That's all they could do. They need me to keep this job. They need me to make money. They need me to have a roof over their head. They need food. They need they need clothes. They need diapers. They need all this stuff. And it's crazy how, like, the moment you have the kid, the moment you hold your kid for the first time, life just hits you like a ton of bricks, and you go, oh, this stuff actually matters. My life matters now. They don't give you meaning. I think that meaning needs to come from somewhere else, but they show you that life actually matters, because now it's like somebody else depends on you in order to get to, like, they need to stay alive. They need you to be like a good version of yourself. They don't need you to necessarily be the best version of yourself. The better you are, the better they will be. So they need you to be the best version that you can possibly be. But oh my gosh, you look at your kid for the first time, you hold your daughter or son for the first time, and you realize that, wow, this actually counts now. This matters. Everything's now, like, before we were playing with mulligans, basically, like we had some redos. Now we're playing for keeps. Like we're playing for pink slips now. So when to have kids is basically you and your wife need to agree to it. Have them young. It's so much better. I'm so glad I'm not like 35 with my first kid, because I have so much energy. I can run with them. I stay up later than them. I can do so much more than they could do. And it's great. I'm looking forward to being hopefully a grandpa in my 40s or early 50s. I'm really looking forward to that. It's better just to have them young. Honestly, that's what I think. It's just have kids young. Like, have more kids than you think you can have. It's fine. You'll figure it out. Like, kids are not that expensive. Kids are as expensive as you make them. They don't need 100 pairs of clothes. They need 2 or 3 pairs of pants. They need 2 or 3 shirts. They don't need a million outfits, cute this, cute that, hats this, hats that, clothes or shoes and this and that. They need 3 pairs of pants, maybe a pair or 2 of shorts, and then if they're really young, they need a couple onesies, and just that's it. Then swaddle them, and they're fine. Kids are as expensive as you make them. We were told before we had kids it's gonna be crazy expensive. I don't know how you're gonna do it. Blah 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 blah. They come out to being like $100 a month. We have it. We keep a budget, and they're about $100 a month, $110 a month. I think each of them are about $100. That's it. That's all they cost. I mean, that's not that much money. Like $100, you spend more on that, like getting Chipotle delivered to your house each month, than you do, like, you could have a kid. I think a lot of people think, oh, they're too expensive. It's $100 a month. The initial bills for the hospital were expensive, but you had 9 months to prepare. So I wasn't like, they didn't overwhelm us. And one of our kids came a month early. So we were just like, it's just, it's coming. And so you just pay for it. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, I thought it was going to be crazy expensive. Everybody says crazy expensive. It's as expensive as you choose to make it. A kid needs 2 to 3 articles of clothing for a shirt, pants, some socks, and 1 or 2 pairs of shoes. Like my oldest has like 2 or 3 pairs of pants, 3 or 4 shirts, and then they have 2 pairs of shoes, and that's it. Like that's what they have, and they got a few other things that they've been given from other people, but like they're not that expensive. And kids' clothes are so cheap because there's so little fabric. So how to know when you're prepared financially for marriage and family? For marriage, I think that if you're young enough, just send it. You just send it. You're both going to have debt. You're both going to be worth 0. And it's fine. You will build together. You have to have that fundamental basis of this is what we're going to do. This is our financial plan. We have to agree on how we're going to do money. Who's going to, like in my household, I do the money. I'm the best at it. I'm the best at math. I'm the best with money. That's who does it in our household. If your wife does it in yours, that's fine. But you have to have an agreement how you're going to do it, who's going to make the final decisions, and who's going to like have the overarching plan. If my wife asks me, how much are we worth today? And how much do we have invested? How much is this? How much is that? I can tell her, but let me get my spreadsheet out. I'll pull it up. I'll show you. So long as you are communicating and you can agree on the fundamental bases on getting married financially, you just send it. Your money becomes combined. It's so much easier when you have more money. You can invest way more. You can grow way faster. Everything's better. Trust me, when you get married. But there's obviously a risk. I mean, I want to preface all this by saying, like, I know there's a risk. I know some people are so against marriage and they're wrong, but they're against marriage. And because of the divorce courts and whatnot in America, especially where it's very pro-woman. But like, it's a risk, whatever. It's a risk. It's the people that I know that are the happiest are the ones that have been married for 20, 30, 40 years. Those are the people that smile the most. Those are the people that laugh the hardest. Those are the people who I look at and go, that's who I want to be. I never look at a divorced person and go, man, I'm really looking forward to be 45 and divorced. And so like, it's a risk. I know it's a risk, but you have to understand it's a risk worth taking. There are so many other risks you take on a daily basis you don't even think about, like driving to work. You get hit by a car and die. And that's a risk. But nobody thinks about it as, it's a risk worth taking. Of course it's a risk worth taking. You need to have your job, people drive, you're probably not going to die. It's very low likely. And like a marriage, yeah, it's a higher chance you might get a divorce. But if you go into it agreeing that, look, I've only been married for like 4 or 5 years, so I'm not a complete expert. But in my opinion, if you can agree on the fundamental bases and how you're going to operate your relationship, how you're going to communicate, how you're going to make sure you don't get divorced, how you're going to make sure divorce never becomes an option, then it's like, it's not that hard. You just send it and you figure everything else out along the way. And it's a risk worth taking. It really is. I know some people will get burned by marriage, and that's part of it. It's a risk. I mean, that's what happens, but it's a risk worth taking. And I would always say, get married, what did I say at the end there? My advice is get married, bang your wife, poink your wife, have kids, and be happy. So that's what I really truly believe. That's the advice I live in my life. That's how I live. And finally, the last part of today's show is going to be learning to admit when you were wrong. I think as a man, I have this ego about me. I think I'm always right. Well, for one, I have a podcast, so I actually am always right because nobody can disagree with me right now because it's just me talking to me. But actually, when I was younger, I had a really hard time admitting when I was wrong. But the second you realize that you can admit that you were wrong is the second you become 5 times smarter. See, and I'm so dumb still, I still use the word smarter. You become significantly more intelligent because once you can just put your ego aside and you realize that I'm humble enough, I have enough humility to say, I was wrong. How do you do that? I was wrong. Sorry I did that to you. Your relationships will be better. Your knowledge base will grow significantly because you won't be sitting there going, I know everything about everything. You sit there and go, you know what? I realize I don't know very much about anything. And most people don't. Most people don't know anything about anything. All of us are just like BSing our way through life. And so I was thinking about this. There's the Lord's Prayer, obviously. And the part of it is, forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. It's forgive us of the things that we have done wrong and help us forgive the people that have done wrong to us. So it's having the humility to admit that I've done wrong things. So many people go through life and they just hate. It's just, you talk to them and they just hate. That's what they do. The first instinct, they don't know how to have a conversation, so they complain about somebody else. They talk about somebody else. We are called to forgive other people's transgressions against us. And that is so hard. But when you realize and you have the humility that realize, you know what? For every 2 people that have transgressed against me, I have done the same to 10. once you realize that that's how life is, you could start to view life with a much happier look, a much more smiles, a much warmer feel, because we all just suck. Like, we do. Some people suck more. I get it. Some people suck the most. I get it. But at the end of the day, like, we just sort of all kind of suck. So once you realize that we all sort of suck and we all just trying to make it through life, you can sort of have some humility about the way you act and operate. And I think that once you open yourself up to that, you really can learn a lot more too. You'll be willing to learn from people who you don't actually like. You don't like the way they think. You don't like the way they talk. They've been mean to you in the past, whatever it may be. And I get it. Like, some people are just jerks. Like, some people are just jerks. I get that. But like, you're called to be better than that. Like, Jesus says, love your enemy. Like, your actual enemies, like, it's easy to say that. It's like, love thy enemy. Oh, that's easy. Like, oh, just love. Just like, no, think about what that actually means. Loving the people that is your enemy, the people that are knocking at the gates, trying to steal what you have, trying to take what you have, your enemies, the ones that are going to murder, rape, and pillage. You're called to love them. Like, that's an impossible thing. And I think that he knows that that's an impossible thing for us, but it's still something that we're called to do. So have the humility, learn to admit that you were wrong. And I promise you, your life will be better. Relationships, everything will be better. You get in a fight with your wife or your girlfriend or your fiance, whatever, and you will, when you can admit that, you know what, maybe I was wrong. And then they will start to be like, you know what, yeah, you were kind of wrong, but I also was. Like, once you open that door to admitting you were wrong, everybody else will follow suit and go, yeah, you know what, I appreciate you saying that, but yeah, like, I think like I could have handled it a lot better too. And once like you open up the door to somebody else being humble and have humility, they are more willing to walk to that door. Most people don't want to do it first. So just learn to be the person that does it first. Your relationships will do a lot better. You'll be a lot happier. And you'll realize that the world, like, yeah, the people suck in it, but the world is a beautiful place. And people can be good. Like, there are some good people out there. You're listening to one. All right, that's a joke. All right, and now for the quote of the day. The quote of the day is from a book called Walden by Henry David Thoreau. And you probably already know what I'm going to say, but I think it's such a wonderful quote. I love this quote. It's written on like the front of my journal. And yeah, it's a little cringy, but I think it's such a meaningful quote to me, and I want to explain a little bit more. The quote goes, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city you go into the desperate country and have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. There is no play in them, for this comes after work, but it is a characteristic of wisdom not to do desperate things." So breaking it down, obviously the first part, everybody knows, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. And I've heard people add on to it and die with their song still inside them. That's obviously interesting. That's not quite what he's saying, but I think that's also a great quote too. But the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. The context of the book is that Henry David Thoreau goes to the woods, lives in a cabin, and he's sort of showing his life. It's so funny. Like he actually does the math and shows you how much he spends on like eggs and stuff. And what he's basically doing is he was the first minimalist. So he's looking at a way to live life away from all of the modern luxuries with the super nice beds, the super nice couches, and all that stuff. So he lays out a lot of what he has in here. He has like the boards. He spends $8.03 for some boards. Nails cost him $3.90. The chalk was 1 penny. Transportation was $1.40. All in all, he spent $28.12 on the building that he built. So it's a pretty interesting book. He goes through all this stuff, and everything's so cheap, it's so annoying. But he basically is talking about how he compares himself and the way he's living to the people that live a more lavish lifestyle, and they go into the cities and they have all the nice carriage and horses and they have all this stuff, but they have to work 15 hours a day at their farm in order to be able to afford all this stuff. So that's a context of what he's saying. That's like what he did in the book. And he goes on to say, you could see it here. He goes, "From the desperate city, you go into the desperate country and have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats." Minks and muskrats, the bravery of minks and muskrats. Basically what he's saying there is that you have all this stuff. You work so hard every single day. You go to the city, back to the country where you live, and you have to console yourself. You work all this time. You have to console yourself with all these nice, lavish, luxury things that you have. And that's like, it's no different than, that's a funny thing. It's like this book was written, I think, in the 1850s. And it's no different than anything today, 1854. And it's no different than what it is today. It's people go into the city, they work really hard, they come home into the country, not in the country anymore, but they'll go back to the city, into their apartment or whatever it may be. And they'll console themselves with TV, with porn, with all these things that make their lives seemingly better. but it's not. There's no real value added. It's just like, oh, I have a really nice TV. It's like, but does that make you happy? It's nice to look at, but does it make you happy? No. So that's what he's saying there. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. Obviously, that's exactly the same type of thing. You buy the nice TV. Back then, you buy the nice couch. You buy the nice furniture, whatever it may be, the minks and muskrats. What, you know what I mean? You wear the things around your neck. And I think the idea is that he is the first minimalist. And this is something that I will preach. This part of what this podcast is learning to live with less, learning to move past things, moving past money, because people and smiles and laughs and those things can only come from doing things with others. And like, you won't. This last week, I played basketball with my friends. I love basketball. It's my favorite sport. I wish I was better at it, but I love it so much. We played for 3 hours outside. It was completely free with just a basketball court pickup. And I was thinking, this is so much more fun. 3 hours. I couldn't spend enough money to have this much fun on basically anything else. And that is so much of life comes down to that. The peak moments of your life, the ones you look back on, are the ones you spend with your family, the ones you spend with your friends, not the ones you spent alone in the basement, huddled around a TV, like playing video games. Consoling yourself with nice things all over I have a nice set of speakers. I have a nice TV. This chair was $1,400. My car was $72,000. Whatever it may be, that stuff is like, it's fleeting. Yeah, it's nice today, but in 5 years, it won't be nice. And somebody else will have come out with a nicer looking, more expensive, more luxury item that you now have to buy. And if you're constantly chasing that, you're never, ever, ever going to find happiness, ever. Because the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. So don't lead a life of quiet desperation. Don't die with your song still inside you. Go out into the world and do the things you want to do. There's a great big world out there that's open, that you can do the things you want to do. You want to make movies, go make movies. You want to build great things, go build great things. You want to paint, go paint. You want to tell jokes on stage, go tell jokes on stage. You want to bake, go bake. Whatever you want to do, go do it, because the massive men lead lives of quiet desperation. At this point, typically we would be in the comment section, but this whole show was formatted around a comment. See, that's how desperate I am for comments. If you have a comment, leave a comment, because I might literally an entire show dedicated to your comment. Think about that. That's some pretty interesting, that's a good price to, what is that? That's a pretty interesting concept where I will literally dedicate an entire show to you just because you commented on my video. I'm desperate, aren't I? So at this point, I would obviously be doing the comment section. I have a bunch of comments from my wife. She says, women are naturally crazy. Yes, Carly, women are naturally crazy. I'm sorry. I don't mean to pick on you, but that's just what it is. She says, really loved listening to all your podcasts today. Thanks, sweetie. Great podcast. You're amazing. Thanks, sweetie. I love this podcast. You're amazing. Also, I'm always right. Thanks, sweetie. And also, I'm always right. Anyways, so if you have a comment, please leave it in the comment section, and I will happily read it and engage with it. If you have any questions about anything that you think you want my perspective on, I mean, if you want the right answer, you can ask me. But if you also just want my perspective, I'll give that too. But either way, they're one and the same. My perspective and the right and the truth and the right answer, they're the same thing. And now we head to the unsolicited advice section. In this section, I get to tell you everything that I want to tell you about whatever, and unfiltered whatever I think. In today's unsolicited advice, it's going to be to go to the gym. So I'm talking, this is dear young men. This is not for the ladies. This is not for the ladies out there. This is just for the boys. This is a boys club. Men, you will feel better if you go to the gym. That's a fact. You release testosterone. Testosterone for men is good. You release testosterone, you'll feel better. You will wake up. You'll go to bed earlier. You'll wake up earlier. Everything, you'll fall asleep faster. You will feel better. You will look better. The clothes will fit better. The women will think you look better. And everything about your life will improve if you just go to the gym. You set aside the time to go to the gym. The biggest reasons that I like to go to the gym, the first one is that it's something to do where I can just get away from everything. There's no work there. There's no what a diaper needs changed. There's no podcast that needs filmed. There's no YouTube video that needs edited. There's nothing. It's just me and the weights. You put some weights together, you lift them, you move them up and down, you mark down how much you did, you move on to the next set, and you do that over and over and over again until you leave. And it's like 50 minutes to an hour of just nothing. And I think that is so good. We live in an age of just an unparalleled amount of data being thrown at you all the time. And it's nice just to get away and go to the gym and just lift some weights. The next thing I love about it is the fact that you start to look a little bit better. It's better to be strong. It is better. It's better to be able to lift more weight. You look better. You'll feel better. You hold your shoulders a little bit higher. You puff your chest out. You walk around with a new sense of swagger, a new sense of confidence. All that stuff is just better for you. You feel better. Going to the gym, it makes you feel, if you've never gone. When I was younger, I was a heavier kid. I weighed 215, 220 pounds when I was like a senior in high school, freshman in college. And I lost a bunch of weight. I got down to 180 pounds, 176 or whatever when I was a sophomore in college. And it was the best thing I ever did. I woke up feeling happier about myself. I woke up earlier. I woke up easier. I didn't sleep as much. I just walked around with a new sense of confidence and swagger. I approached women with a new sense of confidence and swagger. The only woman I ever talked to was my wife. And if anybody tells you anything different, they're lying. Sweetie, trust me. And the only person I ever talked to was you. That's a girl in my whole life. And so you have a new sense of confidence, new sense of swagger. You're a different person when you go to the gym, when you lose weight, when you take control of yourself. I think a big part of it for me was realizing that I'm in control of it. If I want to do better, if I want to be better, I can choose to do that. I can choose to do better, and I can choose to be better. And it's my decision. It's nobody else's. Nobody else made me fat, but nobody else is going to make me skinny. And nobody else made me skinny. And I always know that I did that to me, and I looked out for me. The advice in the Bible is love yourself love others as the way you love yourself. But you have to learn to love yourself. Go to the gym, learn to love yourself. I promise you, it will be better for you. You will be better off for it. There are no negatives going to the gym unless you start to get to a point where you're doing it for vanity and being vain about it. I think that don't do it for that. I get it. I get that it probably can be addicting. I think that anything can be addicting. Don't do steroids. Don't do any of that stupid stuff. Just go to the gym, move some weight around, feel good about yourself, come home, and your wife will say that you look hot. And I promise you, it's better to feel like that. The one time that happened to me, she's like, I really could tell your triceps. And I was like, it's like, oh, wow, she actually notices. And I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for me. But also at the same time, too, it's like, that's cool. Like, I'm really happy that she can tell that I'm putting in a lot of effort, that I'm going consistently, that I'm doing the right thing. So at the end of the day, it won't be the reason, it won't save your life. But going to the gym is a great step forward to improving your life, making your life better, and making your life a lot happier. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Young Man podcast. I am Scott. I will see you next week, Thursday at 10 a.m. for the 6th episode. And until then, have a great weekend. Go to the gym.